Okay, welcome back to Nutrition Tips with J-Lo. This week I want to kick off a little bit of a mini series and talk about 3 of the most important nutrients that athletes need to be aware of and understand a little bit for performance, for health. And these are the macronutrients. So you've probably heard of these: carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And these nutrients are super important for a variety of reasons. They provide our body with the energy we need to do normal things, and of course exercise. They're also important for recovery, repair, immune system functionality, the absorption of various vitamins and nutrients. And so I think there's a lot of confusion, a lot of misconceptions around these nutrients, and so I want to help dispel some of those myths, break it down, and give you the real knowledge to sort of move on with your life and not think about them too much, but understand the importance nevertheless. So first off, it's carbohydrates. Perhaps the most demonized yet most important nutrient for endurance athletes. And so yeah, let's get into it. What's the deal with carbs? Okay, so carbohydrates are actually a class of nutrients rather than a food group. That's kind of one myth and misconception about them. And carbohydrates actually provide the body with the kind of fundamental energy fuel source, which is glucose, gets broken down into the body, used for brain function. It's the most preferred source of fuel for the brain, really important for concentration, of course, when you're navigating a tricky corner in a ski race. But it's also the body's most efficient and preferred fuel source for any sort of high intensity exercise. So that means anytime you're working above a conversational pace, carbohydrate is being used to contract your muscles in your quads when you're skate skiing, or your arms when you're double pulling, for example. And so we have to have a good steady source of carbohydrates coming in order to power that exercise. And so I think, contrary to popular belief, carbohydrates are actually king for exercise performance, especially for a sport like ski racing, where there's a lot of high intensity, a lot of power is needed, and decades of scientific research proves conclusively that carbohydrates are an essential fuel source and actually can enhance performance in athletes. And they're also found in a variety of incredibly healthy foods that we should be eating every day for just general health and well-being in general. Okay, so second point is that carbs get stored in our muscles and liver as something called glycogen, which you've probably heard before. So anytime you're doing a sprint or an interval session, racing a 5K, or even in a distance run, your body is using up that glycogen to power that activity. And so we have to keep maintaining and replacing that glycogen that we use during exercise and activity, especially when we're training hard, we're training consistently, we're burning through that stuff all the time. And it's really important to keep that stuff topped off before training and recovering with good sources of carbohydrates after training to replace that in the muscles, because research has shown that when you have low muscle glycogen, your performance suffers. And so if you're under eating carbohydrates, or you're not fueling properly, your exercise performance is going to suffer, but it's also going to affect your immune system function, your energy levels, your recovery is going to get impaired, and you're not going to be able to actually train consistently and meet the energy demands of a super hard sport like cross-country skiing. Practically speaking, what does this mean? What are some good sources of carbohydrates? I think that's really important to keep in mind, because it can be sort of an ambiguous term that doesn't really mean anything to you. And so a lot of the healthiest foods that we eat are rich in carbohydrates, and so we should center a lot of our meals around carbohydrates, especially before exercise, after exercise. So things like potatoes, rice, pasta, quinoa, fruit, whole grains, whole grain bread, oatmeal to muesli, and things like this are really great sources of carbohydrates. And then of course there's a place for some of the more quick burning, easily digestible kind of sports performance nutrition products like sport drinks and gels and blocks and sport bars and things like that, to kind of help maintain your blood sugar levels and spare some of that muscle glycogen during exercise over an hour, for example. Okay, so just to summarize here, carbohydrates are king for athletic performance, especially at those high intensities, and the body's preferred source of fuel for a sport like cross-country skiing. Emphasize good carbohydrate sources before and after exercise especially, but throughout the day at every meal, including really good quality sources of these foods like potatoes and rice, pancakes, granola, muesli, fruit, beans and lentils. Things like this are all super healthy that will support your overall health, but also improve your performance and keep those glycogen tanks topped up, during heavy periods of training, racing, and just maintaining overall health and well-being. Some of my favorite options are things like oatmeal for breakfast, having a snack of whole grain toast with some peanut butter and banana, a little drizzle of maple syrup, big burritos, rice bowls, things like this that are just going to be really good, satisfying, and healthy, but also going to help with all of these things of maintaining your glycogen stores and fueling your activity on a daily basis. Okay, so remember, carbs are king for athletic performance, and centering a lot of our food choices around foods that contain high amounts of carbohydrates is going to be really important for getting through that tough interval session, making that final move at the end of the race, or just being able to stack days of training on top of each other and just feeling good. So yeah, thanks for watching. Eat well, feel good, crush souls.